No problem.
Welcome to the Parley, guys. Real people, real talk. I have a special guest today, Kru Mehdi from KB1 Martial Arts in Vancouver. I can't tell you how excited I am to talk to this gentleman. This is my teacher's teacher, and recently gotten to know him better. And he's a great martial artist and a great mentor. Kru Mehdi, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Please tell us a little bit about who you are for those who don't know.
Thank you, Mark, for having me on this show. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about this. My name is Mehdi. Last name is Pouroskoui. I own KB1 Martial Arts in North Vancouver, BC since '97. I used to fight professionally, Muay Thai and kickboxing, also pro boxing for close to 18 years. And now what I do is, since I retired fighting in 2009, I just teach full time.
How did you start your career? What art did you start in, and how did that evolve into competitive fighting?
Well, I started martial arts when I was 10 years old. I was always fascinated by, martial arts movies and, of course, Bruce Lee. And I was always really fascinated by the kicks and, how martial artists can be so agile and use different parts of their body. And I was always into sports. And I started with Kyokushin karate, to be honest with you. And it was very tough. It's one of the hardest styles of karate around, because there's a lot of things that are actually, I find, similar to how you condition your body for Muay Thai, and it was good. The only difference was there were no punching to the face, and all the most strikes and elbows, kicks, knees were mostly towards the body. There were kicks to the head as well, but most of the strikes hand-wise was to the body. I started that, and then I got into I said, no, I'd like to be able to box, and then I got into kickboxing in my mid-teens. And then from then on, I went into some amateur competition. I wanted to always compete. I went into amateur competition, did mostly kickboxing, and then I came across Muay Thai in a fight once I turned pro, and I didn't perform as good as I thought I should have, and I was very, to be honest with you, confused between the knees and doing the proper, between the styles, between kickboxing and Muay Thai. And then I decided to head to the land of Muay Thai. Went to Thailand mid-90s, and I started training there. And ever since then, I fell in love with it. I started competing in Muay Thai, most of my fights in Thailand, and the 3 world titles out of Thailand. And it became my passion.
Now, going to train in Thailand in the '90s is not the same as going to train in Thailand now. What was that like? What was that? What was it like for you to arrive there and not knowing what to expect? Like, how was that experience for you? What did it do for you as a motivation or as a humbleness? What was that experience like?
That's a great question, Mark. And it's a question, and it's a subject that I talk to some of my students and some of the people that go to Thailand now, and they say, "Oh, I've trained in Thailand. I've done this, I've done that," and it's a world of difference between when I went there and what happens in Thailand right now. Unfortunately, the Muay Thai in Thailand right now is very, very commercialized, and you see a lot of camps, and you see a lot of westernized camps, a lot of places that just specifically work on fitness. When I went to Thailand, it was I wanted to go, and I wanted to go train. I wanted to find out what Muay Thai is. And when I went there, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Where am I going to train? And it was funny, because I went to Lumpini Stadium to watch a fight. I think it was the second or third night I was there. I was with my wife, and we came out. We were standing there, and this gentleman started patting me on the shoulder, and he asked me if I am a fighter, and I turned around and said, I have fought, kickboxing and, one Muay Thai fight, but I'm looking to train here. He goes, oh, okay, I can pick you up from your hotel tomorrow. And it turned out to be, I made a really good connection with this gentleman, Mr. Naran Siri, Master Pak, and Ajahn Pak, and he to this day, we still talk on the phone, and he became my teacher, my mentor, and he taught me everything he knew. And, I found myself very fortunate that, we crossed paths, and he found me and I found him. And, I remember him picking me up the next day. We went to this really old, beaten up camp with a couple of bags and, a really messed up ring. And there was a trainer there, Master Lek, and he was a retired fighter. He was, I think, 40 years old at the time. And, what I did was I told him, I said, you know what, just think I don't know anything and just teach me. And I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, just teach me anything, and I know there were a couple of other people from, I believe, Spain there, just 2-3 of us, and, training in this old beaten up camp. There was hardly anybody there. And I felt like I'm in heaven. And, things are not the same now. It's all these camps with sophisticated and equipments now, and people go in these bags and this, it's not the same.
I think it had a lot to do with, I know Tiger Muay Thai blew up once George St. Pierre had acquired some training from the coaches there in preparation for his fight with Johnny Hendricks. But even before that, it was starting to have, I think a lot of professional fighters here in North America were starting to venture out there, and, word gets around, and they're paying to go there and they're making money. So now they have money to invest in their camps. But something to be said about that old rustic gym that just uses whatever they can, that kind of produces the rawest fighters. It seems to be, whether it be boxing or Muay Thai, it's always those low key underground places that really have those gritty guys. Why do you think that is?
I think if you are, as a person, hungry enough, and you find that, this is, you're not there because of the equipment. You're not there because the place looks good. You're not there. You're there to learn. It doesn't matter where it is. If you're there to learn, and you put in all you're there because of your passion, I think that's why you become successful, and you become, and you observe everything that you're learning. And, I think that's a big part of it. I know the camps now are very sophisticated. There are all these people, and they go there because different celebrities go there, or different fighters from UFC, and all these people go there, and some fighters go, and they do have some success. But the majority of people, that I know, majority of successful, fighters from mid-90s, and some of these fighters from Russia, and some of these fighters that I used to train with in Thailand, we were in this old rustic gyms, and like you said, and, torn up bags and bumps in the ring, and, and just training hard. And, it was very different. And it was, it was people there for passion of the sport, passion of learning. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
And what was it about the art of Muay Thai that made you fall in love with it? What was that thing that you found in it that stuck with you to this day, obviously?
To be honest with you, I did a lot of reading on it before I go there. And it was just the culture, and it was how this art had evolved through thousands of years, and how within thousands of years these people were able to make this sport a sport which is today. Because, as you know, Muay Thai was the mother of Muay Thai is Muay Boran, which is the different arts from Siam, from Thailand. And this art was made for war. It wasn't an art for show. It wasn't an art for, for doing patterns, for doing different things. It was an art for war, very effective. I was really fascinated by how some of these techniques were actually developed in the old days, and how smart these people are with coming up with these techniques. And, the different range for different strikes, like for punching, for kicking, for kneeing, for elbowing, for clinching. It was, I found it a complete martial arts. And, that's what really interested me, and, made me excited about learning this art and making me go there to the source. And I was, like I said, very lucky to find one of the best teachers that, he was like a second father to me, and teaching me everything, including the Muay stuff. And, I found it extremely complete, as where with some of the arts that I have studied and I have witnessed and I have seen, to be honest with you, Muay Thai, it's very complete as a martial art, as an art that can be used for the ring and for self-defense.
One of the aspects I like the most about Muay Thai, or when I think about Muay Thai, what separated it from like American kickboxing, is the use of the clinch and the infighting and sensitivity of the elbow and the knee, and having control of your partner, and also attacking on the disconnect and attacking to close distance and get that attachment. That was very cool to see, because it was like,
Yes.
It wasn't just a total grappling wrestling match or jiu-jitsu match. It was it was like Greco in the sense where it stayed standing up, but the strikes employed, and also with like Burmese with the headbutt. I found that very very attractive to me to wanting to learn that. What was your transition like, going from kickboxing and then starting to learn the clinch? Did that feel awkward, or did it feel like natural?
No, it was awkward at the beginning, because the clinching itself, I have to say that it is a whole different art by itself. And once you get into the clinching, it is like, basically you're learning how to wrestle standing up. And like you said, you are now striking from that clinching. And not only you're striking with your elbows, you're striking with your knees. And at the same time, there is a lot to worry about, because when you are trying to strike, the opponent can also do stuff to you and use your flow of energy against you. They can sweep you. When I started doing clinch with some of these Thai guys, and they were like, 130 pounds, 140 pounds, and I'm sitting there at 175, 180 pounds, and they're throwing me around. I was like, oh my God, this is unreal. It's crazy. And it was like, it's all technique. And it was fascinating, because I'm like, I'm 50, 40 pounds heavier than you. How are you throwing me around? And to learn that, it took such a long time. And I was like, wow, no wonder these guys are amazing fighters. And because, to be honest with you, a session in their training, and, it's one school I went to, the second time I went to Thailand, it was called the International Muay Thai School. Even though it was called the International Muay Thai School, it was only Thai fighters. And I was very lucky to be able to go there and observe this guy's training. And because I had made friends with you're familiar with Twins equipment, I had made friends with the owner of Twins. And he told me he's going to take me to this camp to watch some top fighters train, and where he had actually trained himself. And I was watching these guys for hours. I just sat there and I watched them, and I watched the kids, and I watched it, and it was amazing. They are so focused, and they have there's no egos, and they're so focused in learning and training, doing the same thing over and over again. And it was unbelievable. And I'm just telling you, one session of training for a Thai fighter in the afternoon between the hours of 3 and 6 is 45 minutes of kicking nonstop, 45 minutes of clinching nonstop. That's only an hour and a half of their training. Then it's their training on the bags, and then they do extremely light sparring to work on the drills, and then they do the Thai pad work, and that's 3 hours of just one session, and they do have another session in the morning. And to me, that was, wow, this is unbelievable. And just to clinch for 45 minutes, nonstop. There is no water breaks. There is nothing like that. 45 minutes of kicking on the bag. And it could be maybe 2 kicks or just 1 kick, or maybe 1 kick on either side, just that kick. And then when they say these guys can kick all day long, they're not kidding. It was unbelievable.
Now, how much of that dedicated? Okay, 'cause for me, I look at it this way, Kru, and you know better. But for me, it's different. Like, there's people who have a passion. They want to be good. They want to be champion, and they'll train this way. But do you find that there's a different level to it when it's somebody who is training Muay Thai and they're from Thailand and they're upholding their culture and their ancestors, and like, does that give them an edge in training when they're training that way because it's so ingrained into the culture?
I tell you, Mark, over the years and what I've seen, I'll tell you what gives you the edge. And I think the edge is, number one, you got to have the heart to train hard. You have to have the heart to take what it takes and be ready to get in that ring and be in front of somebody and accepting to get punched, kicked, knee, elbow, whatever. You have to have that heart. And I think what gives you the second edge is you have to be hungry. You have to want to be successful and do what it takes. I think these 2 things are the most important thing in being a successful fighter. And, I don't want to say that because there is a lot of other successful fighters in the world and they come from different places. I think to be honest with you, as much of success as I had in Thailand, if I didn't have those 2 things for me, I wouldn't be as successful as I was.
When did you know that this was going to be something that you were going to aspire to attain? At what point did you decide, like, yeah, this is it for me? I'm going to be a champion in this. I'm going to do. What was that aha moment that you understood that this was now your goal?
It was that first day I went to that camp. It was that first day that I went to my teacher picked me up and took me to that camp, and I started training there. And it was that day that I was like, okay, this is my goal now. This is my goal in life. This is my passion. This is what I want to learn. And I want to have success here. I want to be successful here. I want to be within this culture. I want to understand it as much as I can. I want to understand the art as much as I can. And I want to get in the ring, but only when I'm ready. And, I'm not one of those guys and say, okay, I've done this and that, I'm ready. No, I wanted to train hard and I wanted to be successful. I wanted to understand the culture. And I think it was that first day. I still to this day remember that feeling. And I was like, wow, this is like, I'm here, I'm in Thailand, and I'm somewhere that is, I'm in there with them. And, I can see the poverty on the other side of the railroad tracks where the camp is. And I'm like, this is where I want to train. This is where I want to be successful.
Explain to me the process of your first fight in Thailand. What went through your head? What was that experience like? I've never had that privilege. So I have no idea, but can you explain what it's like to go and fight in another country for the first time?
When you go somewhere that they respect you so much because they this is their culture, and this is what they love, and the passion. It's not enough words in this world that can show the passion for Muay Thai that the Thai people have. It's unbelievable, and you can only partially see it when you go watch a fight in Lumpini Stadium or Raja Stadium or King's Birthday. And but when you go in the ring and you see all these people, and I of course had gone and watched a lot of fights before I get in there. And when I got in there, I was like, okay, you have to just, the feeling is, it's not a lot of nerves, to be honest with you. I was extremely nervous, but I had to focus. I had to control it. And, it was just, it was like a dream come true for me. It was like, okay, this is what I've trained for. That's why I'm here. And, it was like, okay, this is your dream, and just do your best.
When it comes to those moments where you're faced with that, how do you, or what techniques do you use to get yourself mentally focused, to not listen to that chatter, to deal with the task at hand, and to bring that confidence back that you should have, and you do have, to kind of get rid of that? What do you do to get yourself into that zone?
Well, I used to, you have to spend some time alone. You have to overcome all your nerves. You have to focus on what you have been doing up to that point. You have to tell yourself that, I've trained hard. I've spent a lot of time training. I've spent a lot of time working on myself, getting myself ready for this. And do a little bit of meditation, and just focus, just focus on controlling your nerves. And to be honest with you, for me, it was just like, okay, I would watch some fights and videos, and I would just try to get myself pumped up for the fight, and just go over techniques in my head, just go over counters in my head, and make sure I rest enough, and let the rest do itself in the ring, and just go in there and focus. And one more thing, sorry to distract you, is not thinking too much of the outcome. And I always tell that to my fighters too. It's like, don't think too much of the outcome, because as long as you go in there and do your best, the outcome doesn't matter. And
that's powerful. That's powerful.
And, that is very, very important. As long as you do your best, the outcome doesn't matter. And what matters is, that you've gone in there and you've performed, you've done well. And to be honest with you, Mark, one of my best fights ever that I learned so much from, I've lost. And to this day, I'm actually really happy I lost, because it was a huge learning experience for me. It was King's Birthday, 2005, and 2002. King's Birthday, 2002, December 2002, and I fought Panmankon Kelly Boy, who was a 10-year veteran, #1 fighter from Raja Stadium, and I fought him in front of 10,000 people, and I lost that fight in decision. But to me, that was one of the best fights I ever had, because I did my best to stand in front of somebody against all the odds, because even Thai trainers the day before were telling me that this guy is going to destroy me. And to stand in front of him, and to be honest with you, I had never been kicked in the leg so that hard ever in my life. This guy was, oh my God, I thought he's going to just separate my knee from my leg. And to go distance with that guy, and honestly, I think I did pretty good. But at the end, I was just so happy that I finished the fight with him. I did not care whether my hand's going to go up or not. It was just so much I learned from that. And that fight made me get invited for my first world title fight. And like I said, it's not the outcome, and sometimes it's just how you perform and how much you learn.
Yeah, there's those are experiences that you go through and you know right away, I'm 100% gonna be stronger walking away from this.
Exactly.
Those are rare, those are important moments in life. So
Exactly.
those moments you have to collect those. You have to bank those in order to get to something great. You have to go through those things,
Yes,
because once you go through them consciously, you grow and you can no longer fit in the shell that you were once in, because now you've experienced something. You're aware of something else.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
when you go through a war like that, what is this is a two-part question.
Mhm.
What is it like what's your recovery time for your body? And what advice would you give to any aspiring athletes who want to be a champion? How much of that investment should they take on recovery, mentally and physically, after a strenuous battle, after a good fight?
Well, the first part would be, the recovery it really depends on how, it's hard to say, because, it really depends how much punishment you've taken. Sometimes you've trained so good and your nutrition is so good that you don't have much recovery. You don't need much recovery after, but sometimes, you go through heavy punishment, you've taken a lot of punishment, and of course you need a lot of recovery after that. I would say it really depends on the fight, and it really depends on the person. It's a tough question to answer, because everybody's different and every fighter is different. And some fighters, and the mental part as well, because if you are, like I said, if you are not thinking too much about the outcome, and if you say, okay, I'm going to go do my best regardless whatever it is, win or lose, you need to be able to handle it. And if you've lost and you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to go and take this and learn from it, then you should be able to recover mentally from it pretty quick. But if you're going to take that and bring yourself down, then that's going to take way longer to bounce back from that mentally. Physical part, it really depends on how the fight goes, and how much your body is ready, and how much your body heals after, and how much proper nutrition you're giving your body. And of course, if you get an injury, then of course it takes longer.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. But it's got to be, what about suffering? What about somebody suffers their first time being knocked out?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had athletes that had that happen, or even colleagues or anybody that, how does that affect their mental psyche? How hard is it to get somebody to get over that? Because sometimes it can affect people in such a way where they're gun shy or they're hesitant. What advice would you give somebody who maybe just suffered a loss that way, to get them back in the ring and back into doing what they need to do so it doesn't happen again?
It's a very good question, Mark, and I think it's a subject that needs more expansion and more studies and stuff like that. I've always been very fortunate and lucky. I've never been knocked out. I've got hit very hard, and but I haven't been knocked out. So it's hard for me to talk on behalf of somebody who's been knocked out. But I've done a lot of psychological studies on some ex-fighters that have been knocked out, to see how they bounce back from that, and honestly, how much their career would actually, how much more career they're going to have after that. And to be honest with you, I think getting knocked out is different than getting an injury, because it's way more severe. I think getting knocked out can be career ending, depending on the severity of getting knocked out, of how you get knocked out. So I think I'm not an expert in this, and I don't want to give too much opinion on this, to be honest with you, but I think if you get really knocked out really bad, if you are trying to get back in the ring, you're going to have to need some sort of therapy to put that behind you, because it will always carry a weight on your shoulder. And you know, I remember having a couple of injuries, and I got in the ring. I had a bad knee injury for my first world title when I got in the ring, and it is in the back of your head, and you constantly thinking about it, so it will take away from your focus, from what you really need to focus on. And I think that's one of the things that I have an issue with major hard sparring close to a fight. And I tell, you know, some of the people, I say, you know, that hard sparring should stop long before a person gets into a fight, because you want to go in there 150% healthy. So nothing is bothering you in the back of your head thinking, oh my God, I've injured this, I've injured that. So you got to be extremely, extremely healthy when you get in the ring. Now, as far as a knockout, I think that is that's a tough case. And if you look at the history and you look at some fighters in the UFC, some boxers, kickboxers, Muay Thai fighters, you know, K1 fighters, when they've had knockouts, when they go in there, the percentage of their success in the future becomes less and less. So it's very hard to recover from that, and they most likely going to need some sort of help to put that behind them, or if they can't, then the career ends very quickly.
And that's the problem, because getting a concussion like that, you can't necessarily always see or quantify exactly what the impact was. All you know is that you had one, and now you're susceptible to more. And
exactly,
you can't be taking too many of those.
No, exactly.
Let's quickly go to, what was it like the first time you had your first world title? The first, you know, how that fight went, how it felt to win it, that gratification, that moment where you're like, I achieved my goal. What was that like for you? Walk us through that.
Like I said, I was when I fought Panman Khan in 2002, and I came back to Vancouver a few weeks later, and this was in December. I think by early January, I got a call from my teacher saying, you know, there's a new world, there is a new organization called WPMF, which is World Professional Muay Thai Federation. And my teacher was working closely with them. And, you know, because of that fight, they have actually invited me to go in there in March of 2003 to fight for my first world title. And when I got that call, I was in heaven. I was like, oh my God, you know, I've worked so hard, I've trained so hard, and I didn't expect that call to come that early. I wanted it, but I didn't expect it. But I guess that fight that I had on King's birthday, Panman Khan put me on the map, and I was like so excited. So I found out that when I have to fight, I got my ticket, and I went there 2 weeks ahead of time, and you know, started training, getting acclimatized, and you know, it was amazing. You know, I was so nervous, and I was like, oh my God, world title. But, you know, then when it got closer to the fight, I had to really focus on, okay, this is another fight. I can't keep thinking that it's like, okay, it's a world title fight, and I can't think about the outcome again. Like I told you before, I have to just go in there and do my best. And luckily enough, I was able to win by a KO in the third round.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that moment you hit him and you see him go down, what was that like? What was that like, that feeling like for you? Like, yes, this is it, I've done it.
You know, like I said, I had a little bit of an injury for that fight. So I had, I remember I did an inside, it was my right knee, and I did an inside low kick with my left, and I remember my knee making a sound, and and it was like, I think I had the tear ACL, and I was like, oh my God, you know, I have to put that behind me. It was very tough, Mark. It was extremely tough. And, you know, and in the third round, I noticed that, you know, I had to really kill that pain in my head. I had a knee support on. I can probably show you picture here. If this thing can, let me see if this thing. I don't know. Can you see the? It's tough on that. It's that dot over there on the wall. But anyways, I can send you a good photo on that later. But anyways, I noticed in the third round when he's kicking me, kicked me a lot here, that he's dropping his left hand. So I timed it and I grabbed that leg and I stepped forward and I punched him. And when I punched him, I knew he's done. He's done. And because I landed it really clean, right, it was a right hook / overhand. And I knew he's done. And when that happened, it was just like somebody lifted the whole world off my shoulders. It was like, oh my God, it's done. I honestly did not think after that knee made that sound, I did not think that I can go through that fight winning it.
That's a lot of perseverance on your part.
Yeah, it was, and it was, and I always take this as, because I'm a teacher and I like to teach, I always take this as, okay, great, another learning lesson, and I can now pass it on and say, listen, you can overcome obstacles and nothing is impossible.
We're going to get to that. I really want to circle back to that later and speak about the instructor portion. But before we get there, I have just a couple more. And one question I want to ask, how much of your former training in boxing did you find it give you an edge when fighting the Thais? Like, did you find that your integration and your background of boxing, along with now your new education in Muay Thai, did you find it give you something extra or a little bit more depth and diversity to your game?
Yes, 100%. I think for every fighter, having good punching techniques, having a good boxing training is very, very important. It doesn't matter whether you're fighting MMA, you're fighting, of course, boxing, you're fighting kickboxing. You need to have a good set of skills with your hands. Now, the way Thais do their punches is extremely different than Western boxing. Now, having said that, Western boxing doesn't really work against Thai guys because you can't go in there with weaving and ducking and doing all that stuff, because then you're going to be getting shin kicks or knees in your head. So you have to really shorten that bobbing and weaving and be more square and not bringing your head down too much. But having a flow of combination with the hands helped me a lot. But having said all that, I was very lucky because my teacher, Mr. Naran Siri, he was very, very informative, and he knew all his life he's been around fighters. He was a professional fighter himself, and he would tell me, he would say, okay, when you go against this guy, you got to do this. You got to do this. So he would actually get me prepared for this fight. He would say, okay, he's a kicker. You got to go in there and do punches, and It gave me an edge to get close with these guys and use my hands. But every fight is different. You might, get in front of somebody who is really good with their hands. Now you have to use different skills. And to be honest with you, Mark, with the Thai fighters, if you go in there, I'm just giving advice for some of these future fighters that want to fight in Thailand or fight Thai guys. If you go in there and stand in front of a Thai fighter and try to fight their game, I would say 90% of the time, you're not going to be successful. You have to go in there and you have to impose your will on them. You have to try to do something different. If you go in there and you want to go toe to toe with their kicks and knees, it's not going to work.
No, they do that all day, every day.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah. So the hands gave me a big edge in fighting them.
What was your experience like when you got the call to do a Muay Boran fight?
Okay, that was actually, I didn't get a call. I don't know if you know the story.
Yeah, we kind of went through it. I love the story.
I actually got a call. This is in 2005. This is in 2003. I fought at Lumpini Stadium after I won my second world title. So in 2005, I got a call I had told my teacher, I said, now I fought at Lumpini. now I want to fight at Rogers Stadium if that's ever possible. Since I won my fight at Lumpini Stadium, which, you know, if you like, I can tell you all about that too. But you know, in December 2005, I got invited to fight at Rogers Stadium, Rajadamnam Stadium in Bangkok. And, you know, I went about 9 or 10 days ahead of time. And one of my students here, that he actually won the North American Muay Thai title under me. And he actually lives in Mexico. He's from Mexico. His name was Roberto. He came with me. And we went 9 days ahead of time, 9 days ahead of my fight. And we had a delay in our plane from here. So our flight was supposed to land in Bangkok at 11 a.m. We didn't land till 1 p.m. And our luggage didn't come. They said it's going to be an hour before the luggage gets there. So we had to wait till 2. So I knew my teacher, Mr. Siri, is waiting outside. So I ran outside and I said, you know what, can you wait for me another hour before I get my luggage? And he says, no, I can't wait. I said, well, why can't you wait? He goes, well, they have just legalized and they're going to televise this big Letway competition, which is the same style as the Burmese fighting. And I have a fighter who's missing. And I turned and said, what do you mean he's missing? He said, well, he was supposed to fight. Now he's missing in action. I can't find him. And over there, when a teacher or a trainer doesn't show up with the fighter, it's a really bad thing because everything is on honor. The shows go by, you know, by word of honor. And I said to him, I said, well, can I take his place? Is he my weight? He said, he looked at me, he said, yeah, okay, let me make a call. So he made the call and he's like, yeah, okay, we're good to go. I'll wait. So I was like, I came back and, you know, I told Roberto, okay, we're going to take the luggage and we're going to go to the fights. He goes, oh, it's so exciting. We're going to go watch fights. I said, yeah, we're going to go watch fights, but I'm going to fight too. And he's like, what? He started shaking. He's like, you want to fight? I said, yeah, I'm going to fight. And you know what? I think that was good because I didn't have too much time to think about this. And, you know, I'd done a lot of Muay brand training and I knew how to do some of the stuff with bare knuckle. So we went to this festival, which was by the river, and it was 5 p.m. So I got to Bangkok we got there at 1. By 5 p.m. we were at the arena. It was outside, thousands of people there. And I think I got in the ring by 6 o'clock. I think I was in the ring. And, you know, I wasn't familiar, to be honest with you, with the Letway rules at the time. You know, I luckily won the fight. I knocked out my opponent in the second round. It was a Burmese opponent. And I didn't even know till after that you have to actually knock out to win the fight. If you don't knock out, you don't win. So that was the crazy thing. And, you know, it wasn't until after the first round that I realized, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? You know, I'm jet lagged. It's crazy. I can hardly walk properly. What am I doing? So, and I had received 2 really good elbows from him on my face, and I went to the corner, and right before I go back in, I was like, okay, it's going to be either me or him now, because I don't think I can take this to 5 rounds. You know, I'm feeling sleepy. I'm extremely jet lagged. I'm tired. So I went in there, and I remember at one point he kicked me, and I countered it with a punch to the face, and then I saw in the corner of my eye was my teacher, Mr. Pak, was telling me, he said, go, 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 go. And then I put him in the corner, and then I finished the fight.
Wow. That's, and for those who don't know, you're not wearing boxing gloves, are you?
No, it's just for that style, you're just wearing a little bit of, they put a little bit of gauze on your hands. Now, when I say gauze, a little bit of gauze, it's not like you or some of these boxers with the padded gauze and stuff. No, it's extremely, extremely thin, and a very thin layer of tape, and that's it.
So what's your strategy now? Like, because I know, like, you're still hitting with the same parts of the knuckle, but when you're fighting with less protection, the amount of power you throw on every punch now changes, correct? Because you have to be careful. So can you explain on what that strategy now, how different it is now to employ your punching game taking into consideration that my hands aren't padded the same way. There has to be some type of conscious effort for preservation of the tool.
Yeah, so basically you have to be extremely careful, because if you actually hit the wrong part of the person, like if you're throwing, for example, an uppercut, if you hit the bottom of their elbow, you can actually break your hand. So you have to be very, very aware of where you're going to hit, and you got to be careful, because you can easily, actually, to be honest with you, I was in that fight, I was more worried about breaking my hands than actually getting hit in the face, because, you know, you're very open to hurting your wrist and your hands. My hands are actually sore for about a month after. So you got to be careful with that stuff. But having said that, it's also, to a certain extent, if you're good at punching, it's easier to land the punches because the gloves are not there.
Yeah.
So your hands will go through, and there is few different styles of punching that you can now use, which with the gloves makes it a little bit harder. So you can twist your wrist and go through the guard. Your hooks will get in, and there is a couple of muy brand punches, you know, which you hit with the back of the knuckle, and you know, that can come handy in there. And also the blocking is very different, because you have to make sure that your hands are not closed all the time. You have to keep your hands open, and then not only you keep your hands open, you, as soon as you block, you got to close them to throw a punch. So when you're not wearing gloves, you know, in the gloves you have, to a certain extent, a certain protection. So you block, then your hand automatically goes into a fist, and you know, even if it doesn't completely close, the gloves protect you to a certain extent. But when you're not wearing gloves, you have to make sure that opening and closing the hand and making a fist is very quick and very efficient.
It sounds like an easy thing, but it's very fast that you have to be able to do that. It's
very fast, and it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, okay, so Muay Baran, right, is different. You don't have the gloves on. You have to be careful of the tool. You can also sneak in the punches in between the guard. The guard now has to be different. How much more difficult is it now when you don't have the gloves and you're clinching up?
Yes. Okay. So it's difficult and it's not. Now, if you are, because when you're not wearing the gloves, so you have a little bit more room to maneuver your hands. So it becomes easier
for you.
But at the same time, it's easier for the other person as well.
That was what I meant.
Yes, and the other thing is, because you're in the fight and you're sweaty, the hands can also slip a lot. So you got to watch out for that too. So you don't get a good grip, as you know, and even with the gloves, when you're sweaty, it's tough. So the clinching game is actually very difficult. And I know, I think that the 2 elbows that I received on the side of my face, actually broke my tooth in the back, was from the clinch, and he could easily move around, and it makes it very difficult. And also every hit you take, you know, you take a hit with the glove, again, whether it's boxing gloves or MMA gloves, there's still some leather, there's still some protection. But when you're getting hit with no gloves, it's, oh my God, it feels like a 2x4. So it's very different.
No, because now you're feeling a knuckle, right?
That's right. Yeah, and the clinching, it's, you know, as you know, so it's a catch-22. It's easy, but it's also very difficult, because now you got to worry about him, you know, because it's easier for him to sneak in elbows and punches in there as well.
Well, there's just so much more room for that fine motor skill now, because the hands are free to manipulate.
The hands are free, exactly.
So when you teach the clinch to your students, or your fighters, do you specifically teach them to clinch and be able to do the clinch like bare hand, or do you teach them to do the clinch with the gloves on so that they get used to both? Perfect.
Both, yes.
And when you do that, if they're coming up to a fight, which one do you do it like equal amount of time shared, or do you focus more on the gloves because they'll be fighting with the gloves? Like how does that process work for them?
Yeah, it's so, you know, that if they're learning you know, if you're just working the clinch and they're just learning about it, you know, we start without the gloves. And then once they have learned, then they can put on the gloves and they will do the clinching and the drills with the gloves, because it's more difficult, less room for you to move your hands. So they have to go with the gloves. And they do this with the big gloves, which is even more difficult. And then we'll find out if a student is fighting and then they're fighting with 10-ounce gloves and all that, then I usually put on 10-ounce gloves on them and say, okay, now clinch with the gloves like this. So we kind of simulate what's going to happen in the fight, and then they train more like a simulation with the actual fighting gloves.
When you do, when you're training your students, well, first let's back it up a bit. Let's look at, you know, you retired from fighting. Did you open up a gym after your fighting career, or did you open it while you were still active? What made you start to think about actually wanting to become a Kru, wanting to be a teacher?
You know, to be honest with you, I did at the beginning of I did open the gym in the midst of my fighting career, in '97. I've always liked to teach. I always like to pass on my experiences, and I find myself extremely blessed and lucky to be able to have been able to be a fighter and also be a good teacher. And you know, I know there's a lot of people out there that are great teachers, but they haven't had a fight career, and or they were not as successful. So I find myself extremely blessed and lucky that way, that, you know, I was, you know, a successful fighter and at the same time, and, you know, a pretty good teacher, because I love the teaching so much that, you know, I wanted to open my gym and I wanted to make a career out of what I love to do. And I said to myself, you know, if I'm going to get up and go to work, I might as well just get up, go to work, and do something I love to do. And I know it's not going to make me a rich or millionaire or whatever, but, you know, I'm doing, and in my mind, I am a wealthy person because I do what I love to do, and passing on this culture, passing on what I have learned. And every fight that I did, and every fight, and, you know, and I know, you know, it's extremely difficult, Mark, for me to put the business on hold and go to Thailand and fight and then come back. There were times that I would, like, you know, when I fought in Macau, China, I went on a Monday. I flew away from Vancouver on a Monday. I fought on a Wednesday night. I was back in Vancouver by Saturday. So it was, you know, because I had the gym I had to take care of, I had my family, and so it wasn't easy. It was extremely difficult, but every time I did it, I was like, okay, I'm doing this because I want to learn. And for me, my schooling was the ring. For me to learn was to go to school, was to go in the ring and fight, and now bring it back and educate my fighters, educate my students, educate people who want to learn Muay Thai and all these things we talk about. And I have some students that I teach privately now, and they come and, you know, they make me feel so good, because every time they come and they spend half the time just want to hear a story, want to hear about one of the fights, want to hear something. And that makes me feel so good. It gives me goosebumps right now, and they're like, oh my God, you know, one thing you told me about this, it changed my whole attitude on something else in life. And that, to me, it's very precious.
Yeah. To be an instructor is to be many things.
Exactly.
So you establish your school, and tell me about how, because not everybody knows, but I've had the privilege to study under you, and you are my teacher's teacher. You know, and you know, Joy's always spoke highly of you, and getting to train and study with you, I now understand why and how, you know, Kru Joy does what he does. I'm like, oh, and so I understand now. And I think getting that big picture now kind of makes me really appreciate the way you have constructed and put things together.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
And I want you to tell the people about it. Like, what made you decide to, construct it in such a manner that is very straightforward, easy, progressive, and cataloged really, really well for somebody who wants to come up in something that a lot of people are scared to do?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time, like I told you before, I was always very fascinated with martial arts. And, when I started my school, I spent a lot of time trying to find a curriculum, find a program, and put a program together that really, really helps everybody, not just a person that wants to fight, not just males and females and kids. I wanted to make sure everybody can enjoy this art and enjoy this culture. And I remember my teacher always telling me that Muay Thai is like any other art. You have to first learn how to draw a line from A to B properly before you go draw like Picasso. And, I took that and I was like, wow, this is so important. And that's why I came up with my curriculum that, you got to start and progress from scratch and start by learning proper footwork, proper everything step by step. And as you know, what you and I talked about the sparring part a while back, and how it's so important not to just say, okay, you've been training for a month, jump in the ring. It doesn't work that way. And not only it will turn people off, it would give them a bad taste of what Muay Thai is. And for me, it's not, this Muay Thai, it's done so much for me, and the culture has done so much for me that I want to make sure that people understand what this is all about and what they're learning. And they learn it step by step, they progress, and then they keep doing it. They will see the change in their skill level, they see a change in their body, in their mental discipline, in the physical discipline, and then they progress from there.
I feel like it's the reason why it's so effective is because it allows the student to really focus on a few skills at a time, but without getting bored,
Exactly.
Like, because that's the thing, right? Because you have like people who are in the martial arts who are 100% passionate about it. Getting bored is not going to be their problem. They just, if they're fixated on something, they want to be good at something. It doesn't matter. They're 100% on it. But for the most part, if we're looking about it as a business, especially in North America, not everybody wants to be a Muay Thai champion. They just want to hit the pads and get an exercise, which is fine. But they're still, it seems to be the attitude is like, oh, what's next? What's next?
Yes.
So, but what I liked about it is within your levels, there's enough information where you have a specific way of drilling each thing, but you're also, the way you interchange it stops it from being boring. So it's like they learn to gain confidence every step of the way. And that's one thing I took away from your template for this, like your 6 ways of sparring. And when you broke it down, I was like, man, that's really smart. And then I shared it and I use it now for my students. How did you come up with that? How did you sit down and decide what where, and how did you come up with that?
I was thinking one day that, same with the techniques, same with footwork, same with everything you just talked about. You have to be ready to go to next level. Now, not only you have to be ready as far as skill wise, but your body has to be ready for it as well. And then I noticed with a lot of people, when I first started my teaching career, and I put some guys and say, okay, go spar. I noticed that the footwork is not there. I noticed that the reaction time is not there, and they are lost. And I tried to figure out, why are these guys like this? And I came up with the fact that these guys are jumping in their way too early. And, in order to go in the ring and try to have a good reaction time, try to have good footwork, you have to take it just like the skills. You have to be ready for it. You have to take it step by step. So I came up with the system, okay, just learn to block one thing at a time, then two things at a time, and just know what's coming. So I tell the instructors, like, you know the system, tell them what to do. Okay, just to see that jab coming at you and blocking it takes a long time. And that's just one technique. Never mind somebody wants to throw a 4-5 combo at you, finish with a head kick. You're not going to see it coming if you haven't been in front of somebody for hours and hours and hours and hours to get your reaction time. So one of the things that helped was for me to study and analyze these guys and seeing, wow, you know, they're lost. And then by doing it this way, and I put them in the ring, I was like, wow, this is great. And to be honest with you, Mark, and you know, like I training with a lot of Thai fighters, training with a lot of fighters in Thailand, and with Thai fighters specifically, they don't spar hard. You know, this is hard to say right now, and I think a lot of people might say, oh, what's he talking about? A lot of fighters, they just and Dutch fighters, they do drills back and forth. So they stand in front of each other, they do light drills back and forth to see what's coming. And they work on their reaction time, or they say, you throw something and then I'm going to counter it. I throw something, you counter it, rather than just boom, 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 going crazy at each other. And that drill work, like the name drill work, gets drilled in your head, gets drilled in your body. And when you're going up there, you're not only healthy because you haven't been going crazy in the ring, you haven't going there with a limp leg or, you know, black eye or a broken nose, you're healthy, but at the same time, your reaction time is extremely, extremely good. And that's what you need in the ring. You need that reaction time and you need that footwork. Yeah. And that's why those drills work really good.
Yeah, what I try to do is like in JKD. JKD is my passion.
Yes.
But again, it's the philosophy I'm passionate about. But I know I need my my main components, and that's my boxing, my Muay Thai, my wrestling. But not just that. I don't just go from art to learn technique. I like to think of myself as I keep that mentality when it comes to instructors. I had some good instructors, and you're definitely one of them. And I always try to take, you know, someone's methodology. And when I hear somebody say something, I'm like, I'm smart enough to know when I hear something good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I take it. And like doing those drills, like my other instructor, he said something too I really liked. He's like, Mark, think about his three main drilling ways to drill. He's like, you have your learning speed, your drilling speed, and your fighting speed. And so even taking like that concept and putting it together with how you do your stuff, like you say, even if you're doing a jab, you know, your learning speed, then you have a drilling speed, then you have a fighting speed, you know. And if you're just learning speed, you can't go into fighting speed. You have to have that time in the middle. And
exactly.
There's so many ways to change it up, whether it be with a fast jab, a power jab, feints, this and that and the other. I don't think, and I don't know if you agree with this, not enough people spend enough time, I think, on the fundamentals. So they'll learn it, they pass it, and then they don't really look at it the same way anymore. Would you say that's correct?
That's correct. You know, we go back to what you said about, you know, getting bored. And a lot of people, you know, in North America, and when they go something, oh, I want to learn this, I want to learn that, but what they don't understand is the basics are so important. And going back to basics is extremely important. And, you know, you look at fights, you look at the percentage of fights and what the techniques that finishes the fights, you know, they're basic stuff. And, you know, I always tell my students, do you know how hard it is to land a straight punch on somebody? And, you know, you have to go through those drills. You have to work on your basics all the time, your push kicks, your basic footworks, your basic stance. And it is so important, but you can make it interesting by just doing different things on the bags, on the pads, and with the partners. But the basics, like you said, you hit it right on. It's extremely important. The fundamentals are so important. And going back to what I said about I think that's what my teacher meant in so many ways, going from A to B, drawing a line from A to B. That's the most basic thing an art teacher will probably show you. Draw a straight line from A to B. If you can't draw that straight line,
don't worry about the curve.
The rest, don't worry about the rest. That's right.
So do you also offer and teach at your school, or even just privately, do you teach Muay Boran as well?
Yes. I have a, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kru.
Yes, I have a group class that I teach. I tell my Muay Thai students, if they're interested in that, they have to have a good understanding of Muay Thai first. So start training for a year so you can, have some, your body is ready, you have some stuff. And then I have a class that I teach for a group, and then some students do it with me privately. And also Krabi Krabong, which is the weapon part of the Muay brand, which is the swords, the sticks, and long stick and knife and all that stuff too. Yeah. So
I find that very interesting because my background is Muay Thai Kempo. I started in a traditional martial art, and usually with traditional martial art, they show you the tradition, they show you, oh, this is, and then you kind of learn the sport aspect after it.
Yes.
Whereas what you're saying is you show them the sport art, and then you go back to tradition.
Yes. They can start it, but because there is some techniques and some footwork in Muay Boran that you will understand way better if you've started the sport of Muay Thai first, especially the distance part, because there is, and like I said, the Muay Boran I teach is strictly, it's not for the ring. It's not sport Muay Thai. It's very effective self-defense to the point techniques. But again, there is a range issue. And if you don't have an understanding from Muay Thai about the range, about the strikes, about your punching, about your kicking, it's harder for you to understand that. And that's why I say to the students, be in sport Muay Thai between 6 months and a year, and then you can join the Muay Boran class. And then they will come in, and then they're like, oh, okay, And with the Muay Boran class too, Mark, a big part of it is, repetition, and your body has to be ready. Because the whole philosophy behind Muay Boran fighters was that your body has to be, when somebody hits you, they have to get hurt. They have to get hurt. That's right. So you're like a sharp, your body has to become like a sharp corner of a table or something. So when somebody hits you, they're going to actually get hurt. So, there's a lot of physical preparation for that as well.
What is the difference between the way you teach, like I know, for example, and this, I could be wrong, but I'm just saying through my, like when I teach JKD as a, headbutts, elbow, like stuff for that you would use for self-defense context. And then, okay, how can I play JKD, Junfang kickboxing to like a sport context? There's obviously different objective, right? Now, sometimes the problem I think with traditional martial arts that show that stuff is they show it, but because it's so deadly, they don't really pressure test because you can't hurt your partner. But at the same time, if you don't athletically train it, you don't really know how to use it with power. How do you teach Muay Boran, but still give them that sense of like physical exertion when they're doing it?
Okay, so there is techniques that I can't teach. To be honest with you, there's techniques that I can just show, maybe just in the air, and and if I have to have a lot of control just to show, because they are so deadly that it's impossible to get people to even train together with that. So the reason I was able to learn it because my teacher was able to show me, because he had so much control. But to get that control, you take years and years and years. But the other techniques, again, you require a lot of first making sure your body is ready. And the second is you have to practice with extreme caution and extreme control. And that's why, they have to have some sort of understanding of the art, not just anybody jumping in there. And that's another reason I want people to start training first. So you have some muscle control in your body. You can hold your kicks back, you can hold your punches back, you can hold your elbows back to train this. Because like you said, coming back from traditional, you need a lot of control training these techniques.
That makes sense now, that why you have them learn Muay Thai
Yes.
first, to build that coordination, to build
exactly.
that. Okay, that makes a lot of sense now. Yeah. So do you also offer the Krabi Krabong?
Yes. Yeah, I incorporate Krabi Krabong in my Muay brand class. So what I do is half the class we work on the strikes, the grabs, and there is a lot of grappling, standing and on the ground, with Muay brand as well. And my specific style of Muay brand is Muay, which is from the south of Thailand. And so we spend half the time on the striking and the footwork, and half the time we work on the swords and the long sticks and the short sticks, and some knife defense.
I've just recently, maybe within the last year or two, have been introduced into that. I've been learning from Rene Kokolo, aka Growling Dog, and Dog Brothers, and my friend Dave Baniani. But I actually really like I like the stance of it. I like how it always keeps the weapon pointed at the opponent.
Yes.
I like the fact that you can see, like, the way the handles or the hilts are longer. You can see how they could use that, like the plum, to hold. What's the Can you give us a little bit of history on how, like, what these soldiers would, how and when they would use them for, and stuff like that? Would you be able to give some history?
Yeah. Well, like I said, Muay Boran was developed for, this was an art of fighting. It's a Thai martial arts, and it was made for war, so they can, fight whoever is coming into their country. And there was a lot of wars between Thailand and Burma.
Yeah.
And the Muay brand itself is actually, the word Muay brand is a combination of different arts from Thailand. So, they had, and of course the maps at the time, a couple of thousand years ago, was different, but they had a northern part, and they have the fighters from the north, and then they had fighters from the east, then they had fighters from the south, fighters from the middle, and, their style was slightly different than each other. So a Muay brand is actually a combination of, when you put all these arts together, it becomes Muay brand. So they're talking about old style when you say the word Muay brand rather than Muay Thai.
Is that the actual translation?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but what my teachers told me is a combination of all these arts. So, for example, in the East, they used to call it Muay Korat, which is the Muay Thai from the East. And from the South, it was closer to Malaysia and Indonesia. And there were farmers, smaller people that would train Muay Chaya, which is a different stance. In the East, Muay Korat were bigger guys. So they, even they were you're familiar with the ropes they were around the hands called kachiak. They wear those differently. Like the Korat fighters, they will wear it almost up to their elbows here, because they like to push forward and blocking kicks and then attacking. Whereas Muay Chaya wear it only, right below the wrist, because there were trickier fighters. And then there was Lapuri from the center of Thailand, which completely, even their stance was different, which is, I don't think you can even find teachers that teach that style now. Wow. So the teachers are extremely rare in all these styles. And what happened about 300 years ago, King Rama V was, there was this celebration, and he brought all this, he said, I want to bring 100 best fighters from all over Thailand to compete. And, they ended up with, and the winner will be his royal bodyguards, and a Muay Chaya fighter and a Korat fighter were at the last two standing. But ever since then, the competitions they had, the fighters would start, they start dying because, like I told you, the techniques were extremely brutal. So they started modifying techniques slowly, and then about 100 years ago, a little bit over 100 years ago, they built the rings, and then referees, they introduced the gloves, and the techniques slowly got modified till the sport you see today. It's the sport of Muay Thai. There are so many techniques that are not allowed in the ring with sport Muay Thai fighters.
That's amazing. That's a lot of history. I need to do some more research. I've done some, but no, it's amazing because I like to research. There's so many different cultures, and it's just amazing that no matter what, 2 arms, 2 legs, human being on this earth, everybody has a way of fighting. Everybody, it's just something essential, and it's something that's, no matter how civilized you try to be, it's part of our human history. Why,
it is, yes.
And why do you think people don't embrace it more? Why do you think people put a negative spin on even competitive fighting?
Yeah, if it's unfortunate, I think that's maybe human nature to put, a lot of negativity into different things. I think if everybody like yourself, like myself, they went ahead and they did their research and they studied different cultures, they would understand where martial arts actually comes from. They would understand why it was even there, and it's not to. And it's a culture by itself, and it's an art by itself, like we talk about, and it's not there to, for people to learn and go kick and punch each other. And it's actually a beautiful thing. It just, if you look into it deeply, it can actually help you in life. And in so many different ways, the confidence it gives you, the skill it gives you, and it makes you deal with, obstacles. And I tell you, that's all it's done for me. It's the martial arts that made me who I am today. And even during these hard times, it's what you are as a character, as a martial artist, that makes you strong and makes you deal with different things in life.
And that's exactly why I say kids need to learn this younger.
Yes.
As an instructor, as a professional athlete and a professional instructor, how important and what have you witnessed the power of Muay Thai or martial arts do to a young mind, to a young child? How does it help them flourish?
I'm just going to tell you something I experienced last week, and I will tell you over the years that, I've had the gym for 24 years. And last week I had to talk to a mom about her child who's 11, not wanting to, every time I was training him, I had to push him, and you see, kids these days, they're stuck in their video games and doing their stuff. It's a majority of them are lazy. I don't want to, I don't want to sound negative, but it's the truth. It's the truth.
Real talk.
And I talked to this mom, and I said, what, to be honest with you, I don't know what to do. I am pushing. He doesn't want to train. He looks at me as a friend. He wants to laugh. He wants to do this, but I'm not here to be his friend. I'm here as an instructor. I'm trying to push him. And, I don't want to teach him if he's like this. And, I've tried. I don't want to take your money. And, I got an email from the kid an hour later, apologizing, writing a whole page of apology to me. And, and to me, that was like, I think I changed this kid's life, and this art changed his life. Wow. Because because he's going to be like this with everything in his life if it wasn't for this. And I think it opened up his eyes. And to me, and my wife told me, she said, I think you just changed this kid's life. And that to me was like, oh my God, my day is made now. If all kids do this and they push themselves and understand that life is not easy. The parents are not going to be there all the time. The video games are not going to be there all the time. This world would be a better place because they need to push themselves. They need to. And over 20 years, I see so many kids that I used to teach, and now they have their own families, and now they're successful, and they come to me and Mark, I kid you not, and these kids come to me and say, thank you, you said this one day, it changed my life. You said this another day, and you were a big part of my life, and to me that is like amazing. That's why I started teaching, and that makes me feel so good about this, and it makes me realize, oh my God, it's not about kicking and punching. It's not about that. It's about learning the art. It's about pushing yourself. It's about becoming a strong person mentally and physically.
Yeah, what? That's I've had students that I taught a program for teenagers, and they were with me their whole 4 years of high school, and I still get messages from them saying thank you.
Yes, I believe that. Yeah.
And I tell you, Kru, it's funny. Sometimes it's God is great, because you be by yourself, you're not feeling so great, and then you get a message like that out of nowhere.
Exactly.
And for me, and that's why I respect you so much, because not only but guys like you and Joey, right? Like, Joey was a huge inspiration in my life, and now I see where he got some of that, because it's like a ripple effect. Good people, good deeds, that passes on, and we need more.
Absolutely. Of that. No, Joey's a great guy. Yeah, great martial artist, great guy.
And I'm just happy that through him I got to meet you. And I'm gonna wrap it up, Kru. But I just want to say thank you very much for the time and effort you put into the art, the preservation of the art, what you've given to the community, to the students. You impacted me before I even knew who you were through your teaching to other people. And I hope I can do the same. And I look forward for when this COVID crap is, at least on break, because I don't know if it's going away. Yeah. But I really look forward, and I'm training from now, and I really look forward to coming out and finishing my instructorship under you, and it'll be something I'm very proud of. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate you having me on the show. I enjoyed talking to you, and please let me know if you need anything, and I look forward to training with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Where can the people who are watching this, how can they reach you? How can they message you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, our website is kb1.com, and all the contact information is on there. If they're interested in training with us, if they're interested in teaching in the future, all the information is kb1.com, kb-one.com.
I'll make sure I edit that in there on the bottom. Once again, thank you so much, Kru. I look forward to training with you in person, and I will be talking to you soon.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Take care, Kru.
Bye-bye.